I'm Dr. Robin Wilson. I run the Oxford University Kilns Project, and I've been working with the Embassy of Japan in London over the last year, doing some firings, firing my Anagama kilns with a range of potters from all over Britain and the world. And we're going to talk today a little bit about those kilns with some of the people who've helped to make them, and certainly the people who've influenced from Bizen, the work that we do.
ロビンさんに読んでいただいて、イギリスでオックスフォードで窯を作らせていただいた滝川です。3回結局読んでいただいて、作って窯を焚いてっていうのをさせていただいたんです。すごく今でも懐かしくて、またぜひ行きたいなと思うぐらいいいところでした。
My name's Takikawa, and Robin invited me over to help build the kilns. I came over a few times, 3 times, I think. And it was such a really nice place, and I miss it. I want to go again.
はい、Bizen-yaki 作家の森俊明です。お久しぶりです、ロビンさん。
I'm a Bizen potter. My name is Mori Toshiaki. Long time no see, Robin.
It is, isn't it? 2016, I think.
2016年ですかね。
ですかね。はい。一度、それこそワイタムの森にも行かせていただいて、で、そこで、一番最初の時ですね、滝川さんと一緒に窯を作らせてもらいました。
Yeah, I came over and I was there when Takikawa-san was building the kiln.
Exactly. Yeah.
はい、でその時の初窯の時に、備前にもロビンさん来ていただいて、展覧会というか、穴窯展をしたかなと思ってるので、その時以来になるかなと思って、で今日は呼ばれて大変楽しみにしていますので、どうぞよろしくお願いします。
And then for the first firing, you came over to Bizen, and we had the Anagama exhibition. So I think that was probably the last time I saw you, but it's really exciting to be here today. Thanks.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to see you again. It's lovely talking to you. It's that was quite a long time ago. It feels too long since I've spoken to all of these people. I speak to Fumiyo occasionally when she's firing kilns, but my Japanese isn't good enough to speak to Taku-san. I wish it were better.
And Fumi, if in English or Japanese, either's fine, but
Japanese?
Yeah.
Yeah. 私はInai Fumiyoと言います。よろしくお願いします。
My name's Inai Fumiyo. Nice to meet you.
ロビンさんとは2016年に一度日本でお会いしてます。で、それから時々、メッセンジャーとかで少しお話とかさせていただいてるんですけど、今日は読んでいただいてすごく感謝してます。
I last saw Robin in Japan in 2016, but we chat on Messenger occasionally, and I'm really happy to have been invited to this event.
Great, thank you so much. And last, me. I'm Callum. I work for the Embassy of Japan. I also make pots in my free time. We spoke to Robin because of his fantastic kiln there, and how much of an exciting thing that is for British potters. So we had this idea that we could do an exhibition of people who were using a Anagama for the first time, and that exhibition is currently at the Embassy. So Robin's fired those kilns 27 times since 2016. How often do you all fire your kilns in Bizen?
僕が知る限りでは、だいたい1年に1回とか、1年に2回ぐらい焚かれる作家さんが多いのかなとは思いますけど、昔に比べて大きい窯よりも小さい窯を焚くことが多くなっているのかなっていう気がします。
I think a lot of people fire once or twice a year. But I think it's becoming more common to fire small kilns now rather than bigger ones.
What do you think the reason for that is?
作品が窯が大きかったりするんで、1年かけて作るっていうようなことになるからだと思うんです。それに関しては俊明さんの方が詳しいのかなと思いますね。
I think because with a big kiln you need you need a whole year to prepare the pots. But I think Toshiaki probably knows more about it than I do.
じゃあ説明しましょう。多分ですけど、ロビンさんがやられてるみたいに、チームで作品を作るということではなくて、備前焼作家さんは基本1人とか2人とか、少人数で作品を作るので、オックスフォードにある大きな窯を1人とか2人でやってるようなイメージで考えてもらえると、年に1回か2回になるかなっていうようなところになると思います。
It works quite differently here to Robin's kiln. We don't have a team of people firing together. If you imagine in Bizen, you have 1 or 2 people maybe firing together. So they can't really fire multiple times a year. If we had 10 people, then yes, you can do multiple firings a year. But with just 1 or 2 people, you have 1 firing a year of a big kiln.
And so, Robin, that's actually slightly different from how you fire your kilns, because I understand, you do multiple firings a year, especially of that smaller kiln.
I'm lucky, or the kilns are lucky that they have more users here. So we can capitalize on the popularity of Japanese wood firing. And there are relatively very few kilns like the ones that Taku-san has built in this country. So the demand to use them is very high. Whereas in Bizen, it's magnificent. There are so many kilns and they're all so different. People here have much less choice, sadly.
And Takikawa-san, what sort of kiln is it that you're using at the moment?
僕に関しては穴窯を使っていることが多いです。友人と一緒に作った穴窯があるので、それを使ってます。ただ、もっと小さいガス併用の角窯っていうものも使ってます。
I usually use an anagama that I built with a friend, but I do also sometimes use a gas combination kiln.
Is that the most common? Do you find that most people use anagama?
上り窯と穴窯といると思うんですけど、大体上り窯か穴窯、角窯、四角い窯ですね、が多いんじゃないかなと思います。
And with these smaller kilns that people have, do they share them, or like they would have done with traditional very large kilns, or?
シェアしてる人は少ないんじゃないかと思うんですけど、僕は友人とシェアしてます。正確には友人のところに作らせてもらったというような形ですね。
I think most people use noborigama or anagama or also the kakugama, the square kilns. I think it's unusual for people to share a kiln. I share with my friend because he let me build the kiln at his place, but usually most people will have their own.
So Fumi, for you, I think you've had stuff in maybe Toshiaki's kiln in the past. How many, is that the only kiln you've used in Bizen?
I don't have my own kiln. I have only toyugama. I don't have firing kiln. So sometimes, like Toshiaki, put my things in the kiln.
When you were at the tour guide center, Fumi, how many of you were firing in, because you were firing the big anagama there, weren't you? How many students put their pots in when you were a student?
I don't know how many. I had 2 classmates and some short student, like 1 month. So I'm not sure how many people put in the things in the kiln.
But they were that's quite a big kiln that's shared. It's the only one that I know in Bizen that's shared by a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. Maybe Toshiaki know more than me.
Yeah.
陶芸センターにあるぐらいの大きさの窯ですか？
You mean any other kilns as big as the one in the Toge Center?
No, used by as many people at once.
大きさというより、同時にみんなが使うような、大人数が使えるような窯が他にあるか。
そういう窯はないですね、基本。あるけど、使わないというか、そのみんなでシェアして使おうという文化がないと思ってもらうといいのかなって気もします。
でも僕は中本君のところで書きますけど、 結構みんなが持ち寄って炊いてます。
うん。
炊いてもらうということも含めて、中本君のところの釜は一緒にみんな何人ですかね、多い時で5、6人、もっといるかもしれないですね。みんな入れてます。珍しいかもしれないですね。
そう。
So Toshiaki said, there are big shared kilns, but they don't get used. The culture is that you don't really fire together.
Yeah.
But Taku said that Nakamoto-san's kiln, we do fire together. There can be 5 or 6 or sometimes more of us firing together there.
Yeah. That was the problem. The problem of the big kilns is the reason that I invited Taku-san over to England for about I think it was the 3rd visit, and Taku-san came and built us a test kiln, which is smaller. It takes 2 vertical stacks of pots in it, and so our problem was filling the large kilns, because we were firing them when we began the project. We were firing our big kiln once a year. The learning process was very slow, and after each year, most people hadn't learned much or had forgotten what had happened the year before. So the idea at Oxford was to build a smaller kiln which we could fire much more often and learn much more quickly from. And I think Taku was did the first firing, and immediately after that we've had firing, lots. So the learning process has been very, very, very quick compared to just having the original 2 big Anagama kilns that we had. And it'd be lovely to see Tak come back and see how we're firing it now, because we've done so much since he saw us 3 or 4 years ago. It's been a magnificent. So this is what I've been working with the embassy and with Callum. Using the small kiln, we've failed a little bit. We've learned a lot. A lot of people are able to use it. So it's been an absolutely magnificent thing. What I asked Taku to do was to build us a small kiln that could be fired in lots and lots of different ways, that we could experiment with. And that's proven. The kiln that he built has been absolutely perfect. It's got so many different holes and vents and ways of firing it, that we've done exactly what I wanted to do. He built us an absolutely perfect kiln for learning to fire. It's
with that small kiln, just whilst we're on it, in a second we'll look at some firings that have happened. I'll show the video. I think now would be a good time. And before that, I actually just want to ask, in my head, if you say Anagama, I imagine, the tunnel built in the slope, and that small kiln doesn't look like that. So I'm just curious, what similarities with a larger Anagama and what the difference is for that kiln.
正確には、最後に作ったテストキルンは穴窯ではないと思ってます。小さい窯ですね。本当にテストキルンということだと思います。
The last kiln that I built is not an Anagama. It's a small test kiln.
Yeah. It fires. Oh, you'll see how it fires from the film. It's a good way of teaching the theory of the bigger Anagamas, because it operates in the similarity, Callum, is that the pots and the fire are in the same chamber. There's no separation of the firebox from the pots themselves. So a lot of the theory is the same, but it's when we're firing it, it's a slightly quicker firing than the big kilns, and the kiln itself reacts much more immediately to the things that you're doing than the big kilns. It's very much more like riding a motorcycle rather than driving a bus. It reacts when you put wood in, when you open and close the flues. And Taka-san has created a kiln that you can fire in a whole range of different ways. and with the multiple teams that we've got, virtually every team fires it slightly differently. It's really exciting.
Great. Okay, I'll show you the firing, and guys in Japan, just please comment on what you're seeing. You know, like a narrator, anything that comes into your head, please just anything.
動画見せますね。途中ででもコメントとか感想とかぜひ聞かせてください。
The 3 kilns sit on the side of the woodland, and the wood that we're using is coming from Wytham Woods, from the University woodland. So we've got a great supply of wood to fire the kilns with.
すぐそこに森があって、使っている薪はみんなその大学の森から来ています。
And these are just tiny short clips from lots of firings.
何度も炊いた中からいくつかを選んで見せてます。
We put some more insulation on it, Taku-san. A little bit. It keeps the heat in the kiln a bit better.
たくさんもう少し、断熱材を加えることにしました。
If you look there, you can see the body of the kiln has got some. We put clay and vermiculite and sawdust on it.
こうやって見たらわかるかな。
はい、わかります。
I can see that, yeah.
That's looking through the passive dampers.
ダンパー通して中見てる感じ。
And this is a team cooking at night while the other team are firing it.
で、チームメンバーが炊いてる間、皆さんがこうやってご飯作ったりして。
That's Sven Bayer firing it. He's probably the most experienced British wood firer.
スフェン・ベアさんって人なんだけど、イギリスの中で一番薪焚きの経験が豊富な方でしょう。
He's certainly one of the best known British wood firers. He's been firing since the 1970s.
70年代からやってて、とにかくイギリスの中では有名です。
This is the firing we did with the embassy in, when was this, Callum?
October, maybe? This October or November?
It's surprisingly sunny, isn't it? Look how good that was.
あたりの、大使館が炊いた時の、動画ですけど、すごい晴れてて。
And we've got students from, there's Callum.
カラムさんいました。
We've got students from my archaeology, postgraduate students from archaeology, and there's a lecturer from the fine art school at the university there. And there's a community pottery from Birmingham. Just looking at the people you've got there.
学生とか、バーミンガムの、コミュニティポタリーの方々とか、大学の美術の先生とか、いろんな人が集まってます。
So we've got professors of ceramics as well as local potters and school children. Harriet and Robin Walden are well-known potters. This is from Nessa, who is from the community pottery in Birmingham. That's a lovely pot.
これはそのバーミンガムのコミュニティポタリーの人が作った作品で、まあ、だからこう、ローカルの陶芸家とか大学の先生とか、まあ、子供までさまざまな人が集まりました。
And that's Claude Osage, who runs the French Wood Firing Association, and he comes and fires with us as well. These kilns have been very, very successful.
方も来てて、もう本当に人気あるんですね、この窯たち。
So I think that probably looks quite different from Japan. What did you think of that kind of atmosphere?
いや、ものすごくいろんな人が楽しんで使ってくださってるのかなと思うと、すごく嬉しいです。
I love seeing so many people enjoying using the kiln.
I think the key question or the most important, most interesting thing here is that the kilns aren't trying to emulate what Japan or Bizen are doing. but it's trying to give people a technique that they can make their own thing using wood firing. And the thing that sticks in my mind from when Taku built the kiln is that he said you should be looking for an Oxford yaki rather than, for people who don't speak Japanese, the Bizen-yaki, things from Bizen, the Bizen method. We're not trying to emulate that, but we are trying to find a new way of fire, or a way of firing these kilns which isn't emulating a Momoyama style of Japanese pots. That's not the intention, and it never was. And Taku-san picked that up really very early and said, you need to learn to fire this yourselves.
So Robin is, taking those ideas from Japan and bringing it to the UK and making it his own. And Toshi, I understand you went to Iowa and also the UK, and Fumiyo, Australia. So I'm kind of curious how those experiences going abroad have affected your work.
からじゃあ、そうですね、外に出ることで、窯焚きをしてる時にみんなが集まってきてくれたりとか、作品を作ってる時にいろいろ集まってきてくれたりして、どういう表現をしているのかとか、これをやるとどうなるのみたいなことをいろいろ聞かれているっていうのが、なんかすごくこう、新鮮というか、備前ではそういうことあんまりなくて、孤独にこう黙々とやってるみたいな世界だったんですけど、それがこういろんな人にこう触れながらというか、それこそ窯焚いてる時に相葉なんかは、これお母さんが作ったシチューだよって持ってきてくれたりとか、なんかそういう感じのこうフレンドリーな感じいいなと思ったので、僕もそれを経験してからこう窯場を公開するようにしたというか、一般の人にも見てもらって、この窯焚きの面白さを知ってもらおうみたいなことで、やっていくようになったりだとか、作品もこう、なんていうんですかね、こう自分がこう表現するものというか、こういう意図があって作ってるんですよっていうような、しっかり自分の言葉で説明できるものっていうのをこう作るように心がけようっていうふうに、特に意識するようにはなったかなと思います。長いですけど。
I think leaving Japan and seeing everyone coming together to fire their pots and then asking me questions about my work and what happens if you do this was a new experience for me, because in Japan that doesn't really happen. It's a very isolated activity. It's a very individual world. And just meeting all these people, and at the firing in Iowa, someone would bring me something and say, oh, my mum made this. It was so friendly, and it led me to open my kiln actually to people to come and watch and learn about how cool it is. And another thing I've done is I now try to create work that I'm able to explain. I can explain my intention. I can express myself. I'm much more aware of that now.
Wow, and I mean, Fumi, you said to me, I wouldn't call myself a Bizen-yaki artist, but you do make pots. So in that way, we're kind of the same. So I'm a bit curious, what inspired you to make pots, and and perhaps to put them in Toshiaki's kiln, or where was your inspiration coming from?
そうですね。俊明さんのところでもいろんなことを教わったりとかしますし、また自分自身の陶芸家のお友達からいろんなことを教わったり、彼女の作品を見たり、そういったところから自分もこういったものを作りたいなだとかっていう感じでこう作りたいものを作ってるっていう感じですかね。
I've learned a lot from Toshiaki. I've learned as well from my potter friend, and just from looking at her work, and that's given me ideas, and I just make whatever I feel like making, really.
So this kind of more open approach, do you think the small kilns are helping that? Because I think, in Robin's place, the small kiln really is helping that. So maybe is the idea that, in Bizen too, people are kind of starting to use smaller kilns. Is that also helping people to make the process a bit more open?
そうですね。僕も最初、戻ってきて、まず、釜炊きとか、そういうテクニックを身につけるために、最初は小さい釜ばっかり炊いてたんですよ。基本的な技術というか、そこを身につけるために。で、その結果、大きな釜で、炊けるところっていうところまで行ったので、まずそれが一つ、技術的な部分で大事だなと思ったことと、あとは小さい釜にすると、回数炊けるようになるので、それだけ見に来てもらえる人だったりとか、そこに体験できる人っていう人数も増えてくるので、それだけどんどんオープンになっていくっていう可能性も広がってきますし、それだけ多くの人がこの薪窯に携わることができるっていう意味では、小さい窯を回数多く炊くっていうことはすごく素晴らしいことだし、この実績を例えば備前に持ってきて、小さい窯をたくさん炊くことで、これだけの携わる人たちとか関係する人を増やすことができるよっていう提案ができると、すごくそれは新しい風というか、新しい流れっていうのを逆に備前で起こすことができるんじゃないかなっていうふうにも思ってます。はい。
When I first started out, I did fire in small kilns just to get the techniques and to learn how to do it and learn the skills. And then I moved up to using bigger kilns. So the small kilns were very important, technically speaking. But the other thing with small kilns is you can fire them more often. So that gives more people a chance to see how it works and to experience firing. And that does increase the possibilities. It gives more people a chance to encounter wood firing. And so I think regular firings in small kilns are a great thing. And if we could increase the number of small kilns in Bizen and get something like that started here, I think it would really be a breath of fresh air.